Former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's split from President Trump last year was one of the most shocking breakups of the MAGA movement. Once one of the president's fiercest allies, the Georgia Republican stepped down from her seat in January after the president withdrew his support for her and called her a traitor. I had a chance to sit down with a former Congresswoman to talk about her rift with Donald Trump and the GOP and why she says she's now thinking about building a new party. You had said initially that you were in part leaving Congress because of the death threats that you were receiving your family. Would you consider then running for public office again, or would that preclude you from that?
That's not something that I'm considering at this time. But those death threats were very real, hard to live with, especially the one that came in on my son after President Trump called me a traitor because I stood with women who were raped by all these people in these Epstein files. And, just recently, it's approximately a week ago, another man was convicted for death threats that he had been calling into my congressional office while he was receiving a paycheck through the federal government working at Voice of America. So these cases continue to go on. They're very serious. Political violence is a major problem for all sides of the political aisle, and it's not good.
So no chance that you would run for president?
I'll never say never to anything. I don't think it's smart for anyone to do that in their life, but it's not something I'm talking about today.
Do you still consider yourself a Republican?
I consider myself a very proud American, and I am one of the many Americans, and it is growing, that is just so disgusted with the two-party establishment system that has failed America. I mean, look at us. The two parties together have brought us to $40 trillion in debt. Social Security is going to be completely insolvent in 2032. So is Medicare, by the way. And our dollar, we've totally lost so much of the value of our dollar. All these things impact all Americans together, and the two parties are doing nothing about it.
So Tucker Carlson obviously has come out and said that he is going to actively start a third party. You have said that you've been in talks about a third party. Have you all communicated together?
We are talking together. There is a group of us that are talking together. We're not public with what we're talking about yet. But it's not only that we are talking together. There's many Americans that talk about this every single day. The things that I find really interesting, and I'm not seeing Americans wearing MAGA hats anymore. I'm hardly seeing those hats. They used to wear them constantly. I'm not seeing even Democrat voters excited about the future of the Democrat Party. As a matter, you're seeing a lot of Democrat voters actually turn and vote for extremely different and new types of Democrat candidates. So I think across the entire political aisle, you're seeing average, regular, everyday Americans that have thrown their hands up and say, both parties are failing us, and what do we have to turn to? And I think it is the right time for all of us to have this conversation and say, do we need a third party, or do we need to just get rid of both parties altogether?
When you hear that President Trump has netted $2 billion since he returned to the White House, what do you make of that as a former part of MAGA? You say that you don't see people wearing those hats anymore. What has the response been to learning that he's enriched himself so much?
Look, I'm all for people being successful and making money, but I think that is absolutely shameful. The presidency should never be a vehicle to enrich themselves. And I was one of the Biden family's biggest critics, and I will criticize the Trump family as well. That last financial disclosure was shocking, and there's no way this billionaire president can relate to average Americans who are struggling to get by. And I think the whole thing is awful, but we're not going to see any accountability for it held because everyone serving in his administration serves at his pleasure and is scared of a Truth Social post that's going to put them on notice.
Do you, as one of his biggest advocates at one time, do you feel any culpability for the state of the Republican Party?
Well, I certainly campaigned for what I thought were going to be good policies in 2024, and I meant that. However, I wasn't the one that changed. They changed. And so I don't think I caused what's currently happening now. They're responsible for what's happening now. I campaigned on what I hoped would be good policies for Americans, and they chose, as Trump said, MAGA is whatever he says MAGA is. And MAGA turned into something that people didn't vote for.
What would you say to President Trump if you were talking to him now? Any kind of political advice that you might share with him?
You know, someone just asked me that earlier today, and I have no interest in talking to President Trump.
Our thanks to Marjorie Taylor Greene for the conversation.